Maya Dalton ran before the sun. Her boots, Army-issued and resoled twice, struck the asphalt in a steady cadence. 5 miles, same route, same silence. The perimeter road curled past hangars and floodlit watchtowers, past idle fuel trucks and shadowed weapon bunkers. No one else ran at this hour. She preferred it that way. At the gate checkpoint, the guards never looked twice. Civilian contractor badge, mechanic, maintenance division, no rank, no salute. One of the invisible. She finished the run, paused to stretch beneath a sodium lamp buzzing with moths. Steam rose from her shoulders in the morning chill. She checked her watch. 04:57. First inspection was at 05:15. She would be early. She always was. The maintenance bay at Redridge never slept, but it yawned slow in the mornings. Forklifts beeped in reverse. Coffee steamed from chipped mugs. Someone cursed a stuck valve on a brake line. Maya moved through the din with quiet certainty. Her flightline overalls, patched at both knees, hung loose on her frame. No name tape, no flare. Just the tools clipped to her belt and a battered binder of systems checklists. Under one arm. She said little. She didn't have to. The younger techs called her Hawk sometimes, for how she hovered over systems diagnostics, spotting trouble before the rest had noticed. No one knew where she'd trained. She never said rumors varied, Navy dropout, NASA flunky, just lucky with electronics. She approached the second bay where a UH-72 Lakota had been stripped for rotor. Servicing. She ran her fingers along the tail boom without looking, the way someone would touch the shoulder of an old friend. Then she knelt, checked the mount points, and marked one with a small red tag. Someone had over-torqued a bolt. She didn't scold. She just fixed it. By 06:10, the sun breached the horizon in a dusty haze. The first Falcon HX-9 of the day taxied across the apron under tow. Rotor static. Maya paused, just enough to watch the angle of its tail rudder and the gleam off its dual canopy. She blinked once, then moved on. She logged her notes, signed off on 2 battery checks, and replaced a worn coolant hose. By 07:00, she had crossed the hangar floor 9 times without speaking more than 4 words. Her hands moved like memory. Her eyes moved like instruments. She never looked confused, never asked twice. At the crew locker, Staff Sergeant Boyle made a joke about gremlins in the fuel calibration. She gave a half smile that never touched her eyes, then returned to her checklist. The pilots walked past her. Some nodded. Most didn't. She tracked them without turning her head. One of them, new, Lieutenant something, crisp uniform, loud voice. Too many words for this hour. He talked about the HX-9's hover ceiling, got it wrong by 300 feet. She didn't correct him. At 07:45, she finished her logs and walked the southern edge of the flight line where the older birds were parked. Hueys, Chinooks, one A-10 Thunderbolt under restoration. It hadn't flown in years. Paint flaked off the fuselage. Maya paused in front of it. 5 seconds, maybe 6. Then she moved on. She ate lunch alone. Always the same spot, a steel bench behind Hangar 4 under the vent fan hum. She read a manual on avionics fault protocols, second time through. Pages dog-eared, notes in the margins. By 13:30, she had signed off on 3 more inspections. She refilled a hydraulic reservoir and recalibrated a tail rotor pitch link. She didn't miss a bolt. She never left a tool unsecured. She never rushed, never lingered. At 1500, she helped a junior mechanic troubleshoot a comms relay that kept tripping. Fail-safes. He said thanks. She just nodded. At 16:10, she cleaned her work area, wiped down her tools, and returned the binder to its drawer. She logged out at 16:23. Shift ended at 17:00. She never stayed late. She never stayed idle. Back in her quarters, a converted storage container near the edge of the base. She stripped off the overalls and hung them on a steel hook. The room held a cot, a shelf of books, a single kettle, clean, sparse. Nothing personal on the walls, one lockbox under the cot. She didn't open it. She boiled water, drank it plain. She checked her watch again, then sat still. The light dimmed through the narrow window. Her shadow stretched long across the floor. She blinked once, maybe twice. Then silence. The flight briefing room smelled like fresh marker ink and bad coffee. Chairs scraped tile as officers filed in, their boots clean, their laughs loud. The screen showed the mission logo, Crimson Talon, bold, red, angular. At the far edge of the room, Maya Dalton stood beside the wall with a tablet in hand, unacknowledged. Lieutenant Clay Masters entered late, crisp uniform. Sunglasses still on indoors, his voice carried before he even sat. Something about his old man pushing this exercise through a Senate. Subcommittee, no one questioned it. He sat near the front, stretching his legs like he owned the room. The briefing officer cleared his throat, started detailing sortie rotations and system test parameters. Maya scribbled on her screen. Battery logistics, rotor cycles, heat dissipation thresholds. When the HX-9's composite blades came up, she raised a hand. Not high, just enough. The captain nodded her way. She spoke low, calm, said the Falcon's left rotor couplings had shown microfractures during the last engine stress test, suggested a torque check before extended hover drills. Masters turned in his seat. His smile was polished and empty. Didn't know we were taking engineering tips from the janitorial crew. A few chuckles. Some heads turned away. No one spoke. Maya didn't respond. She marked something on her tablet, then looked back to the screen. Masters wasn't done. He leaned back further. I'm sure she read about microfractures in that coloring book of hers. This time the room laughed. Real, shallow laughter. Nobody loud, but enough. Major Owens didn't laugh. She sat 2 seats behind him, arms folded, watching Maya instead of the projector. The presentation moved on. Fuel loads, weather patterns, simulated threats. Maya adjusted one of the battery dispatch requests silently. No one noticed. After the meeting, she walked past Masters at the exit. He called out behind her, "Hey, Wrench, tell me, how many hours you got in the HX?" She paused, just for a breath, then walked on. Didn't think so. The smirk lingered on his face until Owens stood next to him. "You're proud of that?" she asked, her voice flat. He shrugged. She walked away without waiting for an answer. Outside, the air had turned warmer. Heat radiated off the tarmac. Crews moved in slow, practiced choreography. The Falcons gleamed on the apron. Their turbine nacelles looked predatory. Maya checked 3 couplings and a control harness before lunch. At Bay 12, she found a corrosion patch the size of a dime. She flagged it, fixed it, logged it. At Bay 16, she climbed onto a maintenance ladder to inspect the dorsal avionics of Falcon 4. As she reached across the fuselage, a voice from below called up, "Try not to short anything, Wrench." Masters again, arms crossed, shades on. He didn't even pretend to smile this time. She didn't answer, just finished the check, marked her notes, lowered herself down the ladder without comment. He stepped aside, watching her like he was waiting for something. A flinch. A mistake. She gave him neither. By 17:00, Maya had finished diagnostics on both forward actuators and recalibrated the yaw dampeners for Falcon 7. She moved like she was solving puzzles that only she could see. Not hurried. Not slow. Exact. At the maintenance tent, Chief Thomas handed her a fresh copy of the rotor blade tolerances report. He looked at her for a second longer than usual. "You good?" She nodded. That was enough. He tapped the paper. "Heard you flagged a problem on 3 that no one else caught." "Good catch." She said nothing, just took the sheet and went back to work. That night, back in her quarters, she ate in silence. Rice, canned greens, water. The lights buzzed faintly. Outside, a generator hummed. Wind knocked once at the metal walls, then moved on. She sat at the table, pulled up the HX-9's integrated avionics overview on her pad, studied the modular fault tree analysis, made a note about primary power transfer interruptions during extended transitions. No one had asked her for it. She would still flag it. The room smelled like metal and paper. Her boots sat by the cot, the soles dark with oil. She didn't touch the box beneath the bed, not yet. Out on the tarmac, the Falcons waited, slick, silent, beautiful. Maya closed the tablet, finished her water, and let the quiet settle. She didn't think of Masters again that night. Not directly. But she dreamed of turbine wine and desert sky and a call sign long retired. Maya locked the door behind her. The handle clicked. She crossed the narrow room, past the table with its folded towel and empty mug, and knelt beside the cot. The floor was cool through her knees. Concrete, unsealed, dust smudged in the corners. She reached under the cot without hesitation and pulled out the box. It was military issue, olive green, the kind that clanked if not carried level. 2 latches, both stiff with time. She pressed one, then the other. The lid groaned open. Inside, nothing shimmered, no metals, no shine, just weight. She lifted the fabric first, a folded flight suit, faded along the seams. The Velcro patch had frayed. Above it, in stitched black, Dalton. Below it, the ghost of a 74th Fighter Squadron badge. Its edges curled like burnt paper. Next, the photograph. 4 people stood shoulder to shoulder on an airfield. Sunlight, hard and unforgiving. In the middle, Maya, younger, still. Helmet under one arm, gloved hand resting on the canopy of an A-10. Behind her, the aircraft's shark mouth grinned wide. Dust blew sideways in the background. She stared at it a long time. Not at herself. At the guy on the left. He had a grin like he didn't believe the world could touch him. His name, she didn't say aloud. She didn't move her mouth. At the bottom of the box was a sealed plastic sleeve. Inside it, a letter, folded twice, edges soft. Her hands didn't shake when she opened it. They didn't pause either. One line had been underlined in red. Just one. You always knew where to fly, even when no one else could see the map. She closed the letter, smooth, intentional, folded it the same way it had arrived, slid it back into the sleeve. She exhaled once, no sound, just release. Then the patch, she lifted it from the box. It had come unstitched years ago, thread still clinging. She ran her thumb across the embroidered tusks of the squadron warthog. Her watch beeped once, 1800. She didn't look up. The box stayed open for a while, long enough for the air to change. The light outside shifted. Fewer footsteps passed. Evening thickened around the base. She repacked the contents with care. Same order, folded square. The way she'd learned to pack survival gear, not memorabilia, not for display. For readiness? The lid clicked shut. She relatched the sides. Pushed the box back under the cot, slow and flat. On her feet again. She didn't stretch, didn't sigh. She picked up her mug, rinsed it under the tap, placed it back on the table. Wiped her hand on a cloth, folded the cloth, sat. The room held no sound beyond the faint whir of the base generator outside the wall. Her boots were lined up. Her shirt was hung straight. The cot had one pillow, squared off. She had made it that morning, as always. She sat for another few minutes, then stood again. Opened the locker. Took out her overalls, checked the leg pockets, closed it. At 1847, she stepped back out into the dusk. The wind had shifted. She smelled jet fuel from the far bay. She walked toward it, unhurried. The Falcon HX-9 shimmered under the morning sun. Rotors still and crew bustling around its spine. Hydraulic carts hissed. Safety cones gleamed orange. Maya stood 20 feet back, near the edge of the shadow cast by Hangar 7. She didn't move, just watched. Her eyes traced the gear strut alignment. Right side sat half an inch lower. Load asymmetry. Minor, but worth noting. She filed the observation in her head. 2 crewmen latched an access panel under the left nacelle. The seal wasn't flush. She saw it from 30 yards. They didn't. On the starboard side, one tech clipped a maintenance tag too close to a vent. Wind would tear it off and hover. None of this made her flinch. Her gaze settled on the core transition unit just behind the cockpit. A thin heat distortion shimmered above it, overworked load balancer. She watched the readout on the external panel flash once, a flicker, then normal. Hover to cruise mode. The HX-9 could shift flight profiles faster than any rotary hybrid in service, but only if the power transfer units held alignment through the shift. Most pilots never noticed the lag, unless they'd flown something that fought back. She took one step forward, quiet, then another. By the right tire, she knelt, looked up at the heat vent alignment. Off by less than a degree, enough to cause uneven thermal feedback. It would wear faster. Not today, not tomorrow, but fast enough. She straightened, Across the tarmac, Major Owens stood arms crossed near a support truck. She wasn't looking at the helicopter. She was looking at Maya. Maya walked over to the junior tech checking engine cowlings. Mentioned, low, that the transition bypass relay might be drifting under thermal load. Suggested a voltage test before the next spin-up. The tech, maybe 22, nodded without hearing. Logged something else instead. Maya didn't push. She turned, walked away. Owens tracked her with her eyes. No questions, just thought. At the edge of the flight line, Maya stopped beside a tool rack. Adjusted the lock pins on the torque wrench display. Left it better than she found it. Owens joined her a minute later. No words, just proximity. Together, they watched the Falcon's rotors begin their first slow turn. Maya didn't flinch at the sound. Her hands stayed loose. Her eyes didn't blink. The turbine wound up. Maya listened to the cadence. At 6,000 RPM, it stuttered, just once, barely audible. She looked down, then away. Owens spoke finally, not loud, not casual. That bypass relay. Maya nodded once, not an answer, just acknowledgement. You've flown with one under load. Maya didn't respond. Owens didn't press. The rotors accelerated. Wind curled dust past their boots. Maya stepped back. Not afraid, just instinct. Owens turned toward the sound, then back again. Her eyes stayed on Maya this time. Maya's face showed nothing. Just the same calm she wore every day. The same silence. The same precision. But now, Owens looked longer. The Falcon lifted, hovered smooth, transitioned without a hiccup. For now, briefing room lights buzzed overhead. Static washed faintly through the intercom speaker in the corner. Officers filled the front rows. Crew leaders leaned along the walls. Maya stood at the back, as always. Same boots. Same stillness. Captain Rourke finished outlining flight rotations for Crimson Talon. His voice had rhythm, clipped from years of command. When he paused to check notes, Lieutenant Clay Masters leaned forward in his seat. He raised his hand, didn't wait to be called on. Suggested, loud enough for all, that they run a little demo for the enlisted. Said the maintenance team could use a hands-on appreciation for flight systems. Said they should put someone from the shop into the HX-9 cockpit. Just for show? No one moved. He added, smiling, that Maya Dalton was the logical choice. Said she seemed interested in aircraft function. Be a good opportunity for her to understand what real flying looked like. A few snickers, a few half-laughs that died quick. Rourke didn't object, called it creative. Said initiative like that builds interdivision awareness. Owens didn't speak. Her arms stayed folded. She watched Maya. Maya didn't shift. She didn't look around. Rourke looked back toward the wall. Asked her directly if she was willing. She nodded once, just that. Outside, the air was bright. The sun hit hard off metal and tarmac. By the time the Falcon was rolled out, word had spread. Someone wheeled over a set of steps. Another pulled an extra helmet from the locker. A flight suit, still tagged, was tossed her way. She caught it one-handed. Stepped behind the tool tent to change. She emerged 5 minutes later. The sleeves were long. She rolled them. The legs hung past her boots. She let them drag. Crewmen stood near the landing gear, arms folded, waiting to laugh. Officers watched from the shaded edge of the hangar. Masters leaned against a Humvee, chewing something, smiling wide. Maya walked toward the aircraft without hurry. Her helmet hung from her left hand, the visor cover still on. She stopped at the port side, touched the nose cone once, checked the panel near the hydraulic sensor, adjusted it by 1 millimeter, then climbed. Not fast, not slow, just right. She reached the cockpit, climbed in, secured the belt, adjusted the seat. Her hands moved like someone rewinding old tape. She pulled the checklist, scanned it, didn't read aloud. Crowd grew still. No jokes now. The turbine startup began with a low whine. She touched the throttle. Just once. Eased it to idle. Pressed the starter. The rotor turned once, then again, faster. She ran the pre-flight scan. Systems flickered green, trim centered, yaw linked. From the edge of the apron, Owen stepped closer. Said nothing. Just stood beside the techs, watching her. Maya's right hand flicked 3 switches. The display adjusted. She nodded once. Her lips never moved. The collective lifted, just half an inch. She brought it down. On the sidelines, no one moved, no one laughed now. Masters stepped forward, told the captain to let her hover. Said it would be a hell of a joke. Captain Rourke hesitated, then nodded. Maya didn't react. She adjusted her grip, throttled up one notch. Watched the RPM, waited until the engine purred through its thermal threshold. Then lifted, 2 feet, straight, no sway, rotor pitch stable. The aircraft floated, no drift, no correction needed. Someone let out a breath loud enough to hear. She held it there, 10 seconds, then 12, then set it back down. Perfect. She shut systems down in sequence, no rush, battery off, power bus kill. Avionics dark, rotor brake, then climbed down. Helmet under her arm. The crowd had thinned without sound, no applause, no jokes. Just the slow erosion of expectation. Masters wasn't smiling now. He looked toward Owens. She wasn't looking at him. Maya walked past them all, toward the hangar, didn't speak, didn't pause. At the locker room door, she pulled off the flight suit, folded it, laid it on the bench, walked out in silence. Owens watched her go. Something had shifted. The Falcon HX-9 cockpit felt warm from the sun but untouched. Maya slid into the seat, pulled the harness down, and latched it tight across her chest. The helmet rested in her lap. She didn't need it yet. She tapped the master power switch. One press, no hesitation. Internal fans spun up. Screens blinked. Circuit lights blinked in sequence like a heartbeat returning. Her hands moved left, checked circuit breakers by touch. She didn't read them. She remembered where each lived. Auxiliary fuel flow valve. Check. Battery bus. Check. Nav systems. Booting. She monitored the screen for 3 seconds, watched the self-test finish, then moved on. Engine governor toggle. On. Rotor brake disengage. Smooth. No grind. Hydraulic pressure indicators. Steady green. Outside the cockpit, the sun bounced off her visor. Crews leaned in a little, their jokes held back. Maya ran the checklist silently. Not once did she glance down. Not once did she look out at the watchers. On the MFD, the startup page flipped, rotor RPM visible, idle holding at spec. She increased throttle 1 increment, monitored torque, watched temperature climb inside margin, heard it in her bones. Environmental system, cold air kicked on her neck. Stabilizer bar pitch control, neutral. Tail rotor trim tabs, static. 90 seconds passed. She had touched 72 switches, toggles, and keys. She eased her right hand onto the cyclic, her left on the collective. Let the weight rest there, like it had always belonged. The aircraft responded before it moved. You could feel when a machine was ready. She didn't smile, but something in her shoulders loosened. Outside, the noise had changed. Where there had been murmur, there was now silence. Masters leaned on the rail, arms still folded. His jaw looked tighter. Owen stood behind him. She had stopped blinking. Maya flicked the comms test switch. Her voice didn't transmit. Just the press of a button. Check light returned green. She paused. Her left foot adjusted slightly. Trim check. Then throttle again. Rotor speed increasing. The vibration felt clean. In the reflection off the canopy glass, she caught 2 crew chiefs looking at each other. No one spoke. She turned off the auto-hover override. Manual flight input armed. Rotor blades passed visual blur. Downwash shook the cones across the tarmac. Maya checked every system one more time. Battery holding. Fuel at 60%. Pitch alignment smooth. She lifted the collective. Half an inch. The Falcon rose. Not high, 2 feet, just enough. No wobble, no drift. She kept it there for 5 seconds. Then descended. Touched down with both skids even. No bounce. She killed the power in sequence. No motion wasted. Rotor brake on. Instruments dark. Hands off. Silence again. She stayed seated for another 10 seconds. Let the machine cool. Let the dust settle around the skids. Then she removed her helmet. Unlatched the harness. Stepped down the ladder without assistance. Walked past the crew. No expression. No words. Behind her, the Falcon gleamed under the hot sky. Still, Owens hadn't moved. Masters looked toward her, but she never returned the glance. Maya walked back into the hangar like nothing had happened. The Falcon HX-9 lifted clean from the ground. No yaw drift, no tail swing. Maya leveled at 20 feet, stabilized, then climbed again. 35 feet, then 60. Collective firm. Torque meters steady. Engine hum locked into a tight, controlled whine. She adjusted cyclic left, initiated a side hover drift, 2 seconds. Stopped on a dime, recentered, nose forward, quick throttle tap. Surge input minimal. She entered translational lift phase and pushed into forward flight. At 60 knots, she rolled left, 10-degree bank, then 15, held it. Recovered smooth. Climbed again. At 120 feet, she nose-dipped 10 degrees. Let airspeed rise past 70 knots. She rolled right, pivoting along the yaw axis with only 2 pounds of pedal pressure. The Falcon turned in a near-perfect arc. No dip, no shudder. Below her, the tarmac spread wide and clean. Personnel had cleared the apron. The watching crowd froze where they stood. Inside the tower, someone leaned over a mic. Asked for ID on the pilot in airframe 91. Maya didn't hear it. She was busy holding altitude through a simulated threat dive. She cut power fast, dropped 30 feet in a freefall glide. Then reapplied lift, recovered, no bounce. She turned hard left, quarter spiral, entered a zero ground hover, trimmed. Recentered, then went vertical. Thrust vectoring hit max. She rose in a nose-up climb to 200 feet. At apex rolled left, cut collective by 20%. The nose dropped in a controlled dive. She leveled at 120. No alarms, no vibration loss. Pitch and bank steady. Flight envelope held within tight tolerances. She toggled the terrain avoidance radar manually. Glanced once. Reset. Entered an S-turn slalom pattern using only cyclic input. Each arc tighter than the last. Final pass missed the hangar flag by 4 feet. No hesitation. No correction. She dipped again. Then applied full power to max climb. Rotor blades compressed the morning air like snapping bone. By now, the control tower had gone quiet. A tech sergeant whispered something about input lag not matching pilot. Training logs? Major Owens didn't speak, just watched. Clay Masters stood still, jaw locked, his arms no longer crossed. Maya leveled out at 200 feet, entered hover, sustained for 10 seconds. No tail correction needed, then she descended with precision. Stopped 10 feet above ground, held position. Power down sequence initiated manually, no autopilot assist. Rotor slowed. Airframe settled. She cut final systems with mechanical grace. Skids touched the ground as light as footsteps on dust. Maya landed the HX-9 like she had done it 1,000 times. Not a bounce. Not a tilt. The skids kissed the tarmac like hands finding home. She shut the system down in order, power bus last. Rotor blades slowed until they stilled. She climbed out without urgency, helmet in one hand, the other at her side. No salute, no acknowledgement of the silent crowd forming around her. Just the wind moving faint dust between her boots. Major Owens stepped forward, not fast, not slow. She kept her hands behind her back. "Where'd you learn to fly like that?" Maya didn't flinch, didn't look away. I remembered. That was it. Someone coughed near the trucks. No one laughed. A vehicle approached from the south end of the tarmac. Black. Matte. No markings. Stopped without a sound. The rear door opened. A man stepped out. Dress uniform. 3 stars. General Kenneth Reed. No one expected him. No one called him. He didn't walk fast. He didn't smile. His shoes tapped the pavement like punctuation. He stopped in front of Maya. Looked at her. Not as if she surprised him. As if he was waiting for the right time. Captain Maya Dalton. The air didn't change, but something inside it did. Reed turned his head, addressed the assembled crowd. Sole survivor of night sky operation. A-10 call sign Argon 6. Classified engagement. 81 enemy contacts neutralized. Mission denied by DoD until recently declassified. He looked back at her. "We thought you were done." Maya didn't respond. General Reed stepped aside, gave her space that didn't need words. The crowd didn't speak. Some officers shifted their weight. A few enlisted lowered their eyes. Masters stared without moving. Someone whispered, not loud, something about a silver star. Another said her name again, this time not like it was a joke. Major Owens stepped closer, not quite beside her, not quite behind. Captain. Maya nodded once, not for them, for herself. She walked past them, helmet still in her grip, back straight. Each step unhurried. No applause, no salute. Just a corridor of silence that didn't end until she reached the hangar doors. She didn't look back. She didn't need to. General Reed stood still for a moment longer. The tarmac behind him shimmered in the noon heat. No one moved. Not command. Not crew. Not masters. He turned back toward Maya. The offer came quiet. No flourish. Full reinstatement. Back pay. Promotion to major. Command over the next tech test wing. Her own unit. Full honors. Maya's eyes didn't narrow. Her stance didn't shift. She looked at Reed, steady and plain. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she walked past him, toward the locker where they'd handed her the spare flight suit. Stepped inside. The door swung closed for 30 seconds. When it opened, she came out holding the folded green fabric in both hands. The name patch had been removed. Threads still clung to the Velcro. She walked straight to Lieutenant Masters. He didn't move, shoulders tense, hands half open like someone bracing for weather. She held the suit out to him. Not like a gift, not like trash, just held it. You might need this more than I do. He took it, stared at the bundle like it burned. She turned, didn't speak again. Owens watched her pass, didn't salute, just nodded. Slow. Reed said nothing more. Maya didn't pause at the edge of the tarmac. Didn't glance back toward the aircraft, the hangar, the ranks. She walked through the gate and down the line of sunburnt gravel. Alone. She never broke stride. Behind her, no one moved for a long time. A few enlisted stepped back first, quiet, heads down, not ashamed, just changed. One officer cleared his throat but didn't speak. Masters still held the suit. His jaw tight, his eyes stuck on the spot where Maya had stood. Someone called for a gear check. Routine, but no one moved toward the Falcon. Owens stayed in place, watching the gate. Reed looked at her once, then at Masters, then at the hangar. He adjusted his collar, then left too. No one cheered. There was no music. But something was finished. The video leaked 2 days later. 34 seconds. Grainy footage. No soundtrack. Just the cold hum of the rotor blades and a woman climbing out of the Falcon. Like it was built for her. It moved fast. Faster than protocol. No context. No statement. Just silence that made people listen harder. By week's end, the Pentagon issued a memo. Internal review. Chain of command audit at Red Ridge. Nothing public. But things shifted. Briefings changed. SIM evaluations revised. A line appeared in new flight protocols about ground personnel with prior. Flight clearance. No names attached. Major Owens was reassigned upward. Strategic command oversight. Lieutenant Masters disappeared from the officer registry within a month. Not discharged. Just quietly gone. No one said the name Maya Dalton aloud, but everyone knew it now. She didn't give interviews, never made a statement, didn't show up in photos. Just vanished. 6 months later, a Cessna 172 touched down on a short grass strip outside Bozeman, Montana. Registration unlisted. The pilot never filed a log. She was seen the next morning in an old blue hangar with a faded sign. Ridgefield Flight. The windows were dusty. Lockers rusted along one wall. A tattered map of the Rockies hung near a rack of flight manuals last updated. In 1998, by fall, Ridgefield had 6 students. None were officer candidates. None came from academy pipelines. 2 were veterans. One had washed out of flight school for medical grounds. Another had been passed over for age. A mechanic from Arkansas. A single mother from Utah who'd logged thousands of hours in crop dusters. They came because they heard, not in press, not in uniformed networks, but in sideways stories from people who'd seen what happened at Red Ridge. Maya didn't advertise. She didn't talk much in briefings. Her lessons were short, tight. 30 minutes in a ground sim, then 2 hours of pre-flight, then flight. Then debrief, no jokes, no long-winded stories, just flight. Her students learned fast. They learned to pre-check without ever needing to ask. to feel the resistance in a trim tab before the needle flickered, to react to failure not with panic but with breath. They learned to land in crosswinds with their eyes half closed. Not because it was brave, because it taught feel. By December, Ridgefield got a second aircraft. A Piper Cherokee with an uneven oil burn and flaking paint. Maya fixed it herself. Took 3 weeks. She never raised her voice. Some days she ran the perimeter before sunrise, boots hitting frost. Same rhythm, same worn soles. One of the students asked, once, about her old unit. She didn't answer. Just handed him a manual on low-altitude recovery and said, "Study the last chapter." There were no plaques at Ridgefield, no flags, no patches. Just the sound of flight. Students soloed in weeks, not rushed, just ready. FAA paperwork filed under a local instructor's name. Her name never appeared. Still, the airbase sent a rep, quiet, civilian clothes, asked if she'd consider an advisory role. She declined. They left without insisting. Sometimes visitors came, men and women with tight postures and soft voices. They watched a lesson, then left without saying much. By spring, Ridgefield trained 13 more. Not a school, not really. More like a relay point. You came through, learned, left better. Justice never came in the form of apology. It came in the shape of a runway with weeds along the edge, in hands that checked oil without complaint, in voices that didn't shout to prove they knew, and in the steady hum of a Cessna 172 lifting from morning ground, light in the sky, clean. Maya stood at the edge of the field. No fanfare, no recognition, just her boots in the grass. Watching, the cadets stood in perfect lines, shoulders squared, shoes shined. The wind moved faint across the field, but they didn't flinch. Maya stepped onto the stage without ceremony. No walk-up music, no fanfare. Just an officer with graying hair and a flight suit that had never been. Pressed for the camera. She looked out across the graduates, faces young and upright, chins set like they knew where they were going. She didn't start with thanks. She didn't talk about her past. She let silence settle, then began, "Leadership isn't who salutes first. It's who stays behind when the last engine dies down. It's how you treat the crew chief who hasn't slept, the mechanic who missed chow fixing the bird you took up. It's what you say to the airmen when they think they failed. And you remember that once you failed too." She paused. They listened. Out in the audience sat rows of families, and a few others. Not all wore uniforms, some wore worn jackets. Hands like steel and eyes like they'd seen ground too close from the sky. Maya's voice stayed calm. "You'll be trained to fly fast, to move sharp, to calculate risk in seconds. You'll learn how to act under fire, but no classroom will teach you what matters most. It's what you do when no one's looking, when there's no medal, no footage, just choice." She didn't say more. She stepped back, saluted once, and walked off the stage. They didn't cheer, not right away. But they watched her like something old had passed by. Not a legend. Something quieter, heavier. Afterward, one cadet whispered that the woman who spoke had once landed a helicopter, blind during a mountain sandstorm. Another said she was the ghost from Red Ridge. A third had flown at her school. Called her just Maya, nothing more. The ceremony ended like they always did. Flags folded, caps thrown, brass handshakes. Maya didn't stay for photos. She boarded a civilian flight out of Colorado Springs before the sun set. The next morning, she stood beside the hangar at Ridgefield. Frost on the door hinges, smell of old oil and pine in the wind. A girl, maybe 19, stood beside the Piper Cherokee. Nervous, helmet crooked, checklist in hand. Maya didn't say good luck, didn't say anything. She just nodded once, then stepped back and let the student climb in. The engine started slow, then settled. Wheels rolled onto the strip. The girl hesitated, then advanced throttle. The aircraft lifted clean. Maya watched without smiling, just still. Justice had never been about punishment. It had always been about motion.